Hello and welcome to Denizen Scripting Tutorials. Today we're going to talk about a rather advanced subject. We're going into full detail on how tags work internally. So if you're still learning Denizen, you might want to skip this video. So the question here is, how does the tag parsing code read tags in Denizen? So I'm just going to jump straight into it and hopefully you'll be able to keep up. So when it sees a tag like this, player.name, it actually reads it piece by piece. First it reads the whole line and sees that there's a tag here, noted by the tag marks. Then it splits it up around this dot symbol, so it sees player and it sees name as two separate parts of a tag. The first part, just player, actually returns on its own. Let's try that. So as you can see, it returns my player object, which is p@, which denotes that it's a player object, followed by my full unique ID, which is really long and confusing. That's why we use the name, not the player object. So it sees the player tag and it creates this big blob, and then from there it sees that it wants the name of that big blob. So, well, it reads that and finds the name, which is McMonkey, and that's basically how it reads the tag. So for some tags, like this one, it doesn't work quite the same. When it sees util, it doesn't return any object. As you'll see, it's just util. It doesn't know what that is on its own. Util doesn't have an object. It's its own custom thing, and neither does random, which is also its own custom thing. Neither does int, which is also its own custom thing. It's only when you have the full tag that the tag parser knows what this is and is able to fill it. So the tag parser will read util, and it'll go to the section labeled util to decide what to do with it, and then it'll go to the section labeled random, and then to the section labeled int, which only has the section 2, and it reads it in order like that. And once it gets to int, it reads the context of the tag, which is the 1 in brackets, and then once it's onto 2, it reads the context, which is the 5 in brackets. It's important to know that the tags are read in order from left to right like that. Otherwise you might get a bit mixed up. But another thing to note is that tags within tags are read as well. For example, you could type util.random.int 1.25 again, except change 1 to another tag, util.random.int 2.23. So now we have a tag within a tag, and we're going to make another one of those. From 5 to 6. So now it's going to read all these tags, and it's going to read this one first, then this one, left to right, then the big one containing both of them. As we'll see, it chooses a random number, and you can see here in the debug that it filled the 2 to 3, which is the first one, then the 5 to 6, which is what I said was second, and then it fills the big one as though it were its own tag without anything inside of it. Since this one got filled with 2, and the other one was 6, as you can see here in the debug, it just read the last tag like you had directly input 2 and 6. And you could put tags as dense and deep as you want, just try to make sure it's clear so people can read your script and know what it does. In fact, this right here isn't very clear. Probably shouldn't do it like this. So I want to show you a more advanced tag to show you just how complex it can get. So this tag is quite a bit more complex. Player.location.find.entities.within this big tag .get1.asPlayer.name, and this big tag is util.random.int from util.random.int from 1 to 10, and then all of that to 10, which by the way is a weighted random, which means it's a random number that tends to be closer to 10 rather than closer to 1. That's a cool little trick you can use. Anyway, so if we try this tag, it narrates my name. This massive tag narrates my name. It's the same as player.name. Tags can get really big and complex, and the important thing to remember when writing big tags is how can you simplify it. This whole thing can just be player.name, and a lot of times other big tags can also be shortened. Another thing to note about this tag is how it works. Player.location.find.entities.within a distance returns a list of all entities within a distance. Because it's a list, we have to get the first entry, which is the closest one. And because we're getting from a list, at the moment you have to convert that value to a player. It is already a player object, but it's just text as far as the get tag is concerned. So then you have to convert that text to a player from the text of a player object to the actual player object before getting the name. This isn't the best way of handling it. We'll likely fix this in the future, but in a bit I'll show you another tag that does it better. That's probably how get is going to work in the future. Another thing to know about tags and how they're read is definitions. Define value 3, narrate value. Definitions are different from tags because, as you can see, they're marked with % signs rather than tag marks. You can also just do def value, which uses normal tag parsing, but whichever you prefer really. But they're read differently and can be used in different ways. So let's try that out just to see it. They both narrated 3, as expected, because they're both defined as 3. So the cool thing about this definition setup is that they're actually parsed before tags. And you can even put them inside tags. For example, if you were to define value as util.random.int, you can now do value 1.25. And it picked a random number from 1 to 5 because of the way that definitions work. Technically, you could also do this with embedded tags, but that's not recommended, and we're likely gonna work that out in the future because, well, it's just dangerous to do it like that. You can actually put these anywhere. In fact, if you do this, find value narrate, you can do value hello world. Actually, you need to put quotes around the whole thing because of how YAML's parsed. Okay, so if we try that, it narrated hello world. Pretty cool how you can do that. So you can also put objects directly into your tag. For example, well, let's create an NPC. Bob the NPC is ID 0, because this is our first NPC on the server, and at 0.name. And at 0 is the NPC object. It's defined by the ID number of the NPC. So let's try that. It narrated Bob. It knew its name. So that's basically what an object is. It looks just like that and pretty powerful. Using objects and tags and knowing how to use them and how they work, you can achieve quite a bit. One really cool tag I wanted to go over is the definition tag. If we do define value, let's say, can't make monkey forever, my object. This, by the way, is not what the standard object is, but you can define it this way by name. Normally it takes unique ID, but it works either way. There are several different ways to create an object, but only one that it'll show up as. For example, if we narrate def value, and try that, it's got my unique ID instead of that. But if we narrate value as a definition type thing, we get it back literally. Because the definition tag does something cool. It actually parses the input and figures out what kind of object it is and handles it like that object. So you can put def value.name, and it has my name. Because the def tag will return whatever object type is relevant based on the p@ or whatever at you have with the object identifier. Not a lot of tags do this. We need to integrate it more, but it's pretty cool how def does this, and it's very useful if you know how to use it. So I do believe that's all I wanted to go over for today. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you want to keep up to date with the new videos. Bye.